Hello, movie and entertainment fans, and welcome back to the Calvin Cam podcast, where we tackle all sorts of topics in the film, television, and video game world. I'm Calvin, and today we have another breakdown and review episode for HBO's The Last of Us. So get ready, get comfortable, and let's dive right into it. Episode 4, better known as Please Hold My Hand, was a very interesting episode, and among the 3 previous episodes we've seen, I'd say this one is the weakest, and in saying that, I don't believe it was bad by any means. It is the weakest of the episodes we've seen. A show like this needs to slow down sometimes to give us a breather before shit hits the fan, especially after being dragged through 3 emotional episodes that left us all completely destroyed. But that's the thing about the first 3 episodes. They successfully laid down the groundwork and set up the tone of the show, and now we can catch our breaths for a moment and start the main focus of the story, which is our time spent with Joel and Ellie. And that's exactly what I viewed episode 4 as. Time to see Joel and Ellie develop as the dynamic duo they are in the video game. And in fact, this episode started off with some scenes and dialogue ripped right out of the game. Continuing right where we left off, after retrieving the battery and the truck from Bill and Frank, R.I.P. Kings, Joel and Ellie have hit the road to travel to Wyoming, where Tommy was last seen. The episode opens up on Ellie examining the gun that she took from Bill's house, and it's a good moment to stop and take a look at Ellie's character. She waves it around in front of the mirror like she's playing with a toy, showing us once again that Ellie is just a kid. She's probably imagining herself as some awesome badass in this world, the way that she looks and smirks when she has the gun hints that she has this idea that violence is supposed to be fun in this world. Which later in the episode is not the case. Then outside, Joel is siphoning gas from a car, and he's talking to Ellie about why they are having to do it every hour. He goes on to explain that a tank of gas used to last a long time, but not anymore. We also see another example right here of Ellie's obsession with pre-pandemic times as she asks Joel another question about the past, where you would used to go with gas. Joel replies with nowhere, which in my viewing has a hidden meaning. Joel hates the past for obvious reasons. People suck and didn't care about how they spent their time, including Joel working day to day and missing out on his daughter's life. When Ellie asks about past things, Joel quickly tries to get out of the questions, because for him, the only part of the past that he cares about is Sarah, and I'm pretty sure he doesn't want to remember what happened to her constantly. After that, Ellie gets slightly bored waiting on the gas and pulls out a book called No Pun Intended by Will Livingston, which is filled with terribly written puns, and she reads them to Joel to pass the time. This is a part that is ripped right out of the game, and every joke that she reads is exactly the same as the game too. It doesn't matter how far you push the envelope, it'll still be stationary. What did the mermaid wear to her math class? An algebra. I stayed up all night wondering where the sun went, and then it dawned on me. Terrible puns, slightly funny, but it was a great scene. Shortly after, we get another couple of fantastic callbacks to the video game, which is Bill's magazine in the truck, with dialogue straight out of the video game, like Ellie saying, "I want to see what all the fuss is about." And also, the Hank Williams cassette tape she finds in the truck, which, if you listen to the song that plays called Forsaken, it is a great parallel to Joel's life, actually. But moving forward, part of the episode that I really love is when they camp for the night off the highway in the woods. A great scene which sets up some more relationship building between our 2 characters, and when they go to bed, we see Joel end up staying up all night because he's starting to care for Ellie almost like a daughter. They were far enough away from infected, but there might be people, and people still pose one of, if not the biggest threat in surviving the apocalypse. Which brings us to my next topic, the Hunters. The Hunters in the game were hinted at being a little more chaotic than the show. They were a group of rapists and killers who would ambush travelers and take their goods and belongings. Joel and Ellie travel through the city and find out the QZ is gone, and then get ambushed. As they make their escape, they crash into a building and fight off some hunters. As Joel and Ellie hide from the hunters behind the car as they are being fired at, Joel tells Ellie to hide in a hole on the wall. It's a great moment that is clearly set up to build trust. Joel then finishes up the shootout, but ends up wrestling a guy who came in through the back of the building, and the guy nearly chokes him out, which forces Ellie to use the gun that she took from Bill's to shoot him. And she is so shaken up from having to do that, it's a perfect callback to the beginning of the episode, thinking that having a gun is badass, to realizing that it is terrifying to have life-ending power in your hand. The guy she shot, Brian, is then killed by Joel as he tells Ellie to look away, showing us that Joel has clearly had a dark past surviving in this world. They then seek shelter in the city to hide from these new enemies. This is a shifting perspective moment in the episode over to the Hunters, where we get to learn a little bit more about them. The Hunters are led by a woman named Kathleen, assuming Brian's mom. As soon as she finds out that what Joel did, she is filled with revenge and rage. However, she doesn't know it was Joel. She thinks it was done by a small group of people who rebelled against their own group. We also learn that they're hunting a character that we will be introduced to later in the show, who is named Henry, and Henry has a little brother named Sam who he's protected. They're straight up characters right out of the video game. They come into play at the end of this segment. Kathleen also has a doctor who she is interrogating, trying to figure out where Henry is located, but doesn't get any answers, and she ends up executing. She's so hell-bent on her revenge against Henry betraying the group that she is ignoring clear judgment. Some members of their group tell her they found where Henry and Sam are located at. She follows them to the building. She looks around. She sees Sam's artwork all over the place. She goes, they can't go up far. They're out of food. They got to be around somewhere. A member of her team, who is played by the same voice actor who plays Tommy in the video game, takes her down to the basement level of the building and shows us that there is something happening under the ground. I can only assume that this is going to be the bloater, which is a giant infected. And instead of dealing with the issue now with her men, she decides to ignore it because she just wants her revenge. Now let's jump back over to Joel and Ellie. Joel and Ellie are hiding out in a building, and this is the first time we actually get to see something different with Joel and Ellie. Joel has protected Ellie from physical harm, but he has to now protect her from trauma, emotional harm. Joel clearly feels like it is his fault that Ellie had to pull the trigger because he didn't hear Brian coming from the back. He goes on to say, "You're just a kid. You shouldn't have had to do that." Ellie lets out some tears, and she expresses it wasn't her first time she's had to make a decision this intense, which is how a child will lose their innocence. And then, just like in the game, Joel teaches Ellie how to hold a gun, except for in the game, I believe he does it with a rifle. And now Joel is starting to see Ellie less as cargo and more as an actual person, a kid. She lets out a pretty funny pun from the book, I assume, that is, "Did you know diarrhea is hereditary? It runs in your genes," which makes Joel actually laugh, which I don't think I remember seeing Joel ever laugh in the video game. So it was nice to see Pedro Pascal bring that emotion to Joel's character. All in all, this episode was just a big setup episode. It was good, you know. Like I said, even though it is the weakest of the 4 episodes that are out, it is still really solid. And it is building up for what I imagine is the next craziest episode. That is the episode that I think we will finally be introduced to the bloaters. So my final verdict is I give this episode a solid 8 out of 10. It was great, and I'm, loving this entire show. Loving all the differences. I say it time and time again in these reviews, but I love them. That'll conclude today's episode. So thanks for listening in, everyone, and we'll catch you next week. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening into the Calvin Cam podcast. I am so incredibly grateful for all of you listeners out there. You can find me on all audio streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, Amazon, etc. And I also have a YouTube channel that I upload to. So go check me out. If you want to follow me on Instagram and Twitter, I also have those, the Calvin Cam. So check it out. Thanks for your support, and we'll see you soon.